So in this workshop, you're going to be teaching people how it works and then teaching some techniques?
Absolutely, absolutely. So the word meditation, for example, most people don't know that the word in Tibetan literally means to become familiar with, to make known, to know thyself. And so the process of change actually requires unlearning and relearning. It requires breaking the habit of the old self, because when the body becomes the mind, anytime the body knows better than the brain, or the body becomes the mind, that's called a habit. A habit is when the body is the mind. So we have to break the habit of the old self and reinvent a new self, or what we call in neuroscience pruning synaptic connections and sprouting new connections, or unmemorizing an emotion and then reconditioning the body to a new emotion or to a new mind. So the meditative process that we'll be teaching has everything to do with becoming familiar with those unconscious thoughts, those unconscious behaviors, and those unconscious feelings and emotions, and making them conscious, and so that when we make them more conscious, we have more control over them. And then to reinvent a new self, to really begin to think about a new way of being, a new way of thinking. And the science in the latest research in neuroscience shows that we can change the brain and the mind and the body to look like the event has happened ahead of the actual event, just by the meditative process. So if we can change the brain and body ahead of the actual physical experience, then that usually means that we put the hardware in place and we've conditioned the body to be prepared for the event ahead of the event. And that's, according to the quantum law, when the events start to find us. That's when those synchronicities begin to show up in our life that are the result of our own personal efforts.
So thank you for answering that, Dr. Joe. And so is this going to be regular meditation that we all know how to just kind of clear our mind, look at a candle, or is there going to be something different?
Oh, absolutely not.
This?
It won't be anything like that. There'll be 10 steps to the meditative process, and every single step will have a philosophical and scientific understanding so that you know what you're doing and why. And once you understand what you're doing and why you're doing it, you have intention behind it, and you understand that because you have a greater understanding that it has meaning. So it's a different meditation that requires both that unlearning and relearning process, and the steps will they'll be explained pretty thoroughly, and people get handouts, and they'll have an opportunity to practice it.
Wonderful. So how long each day do you meditate for using this process?
Well, I typically wake up at 4:55 every morning. That's my time. And I allow for 2 hours every morning for myself, from 5 o'clock to 7 o'clock in the morning. That's my time. And the reason I allow that much time is because whenever we begin to work on ourselves, there's the door to the subconscious mind opens up twice. It opens up when you wake up in the morning, and when you wake up in the morning, your brain waves are changing from delta to theta to alpha to beta, and so there's a kind of a thin veil between the conscious mind and the subconscious. So it's really fertile ground to begin to set intentions and then surrender the outcomes to a greater mind. And so I usually allow 2 hours because when I wake up in the morning, there's a lot of things that I know that I have to do during the day. I have, patients and staff and traveling and contracts and meetings and paperwork and thousands of things that usually distract most people from the process of creation. And so I allow 2 hours because it usually takes me a little bit of time to get past myself and begin to think about what I really want to have happen in my future. Once I get beyond that, I get beyond those thoughts, I begin to ask myself this question, what is the greatest ideal that I can be today? What is the greatest person that I could be? And I allow myself to begin to let my brain work in different ways than it typically would work if I woke up and did the same thing and got out of bed the same way and brushed my teeth and drove to work and did the same thing that I always do. And so the neuroscientific definition of mind is the brain in action or the brain at work. So if you wake up and think the same thoughts and perform the same behaviors, and you allow the environment to activate different circuits in your brain, pretty much your thinking equal to the environment, and the brain isn't working any differently, so you're never making a new mind. So the beauty behind the meditative process that we teach has everything to do with changing the mind before the experience, that you could actually make the brain work in different sequences and different patterns, different combinations, because you're thinking thoughts differently than you typically do. And because we can make thought more real than anything else, that's the privilege of being a human being. We can literally begin to make the thought become the experience. Now, if we do that properly, the end product of an experience is a feeling or an emotion. And if the thought becomes the experience in our own mind, the body begins to respond as if the experience is happening. Now, what's the beauty behind that? Well, the moment you begin to feel like that new ideal, or feel like that successful person, or feel like that person that's in love, or feel like that free person, the body is being conditioned by that emotion and the body, as the unconscious mind, thinks it's in the event. It doesn't know the difference between the actual physical event that creates the emotion or the emotion that you conjure up on your own. And so if we can get up as a new ideal of ourselves every day, then we're more prone to think and act in different ways. So I allow a couple hours every day.